Her Grand Ducal Highness Princess Irene of Hesse and by Rhine. She was born on the 11th of July 1866 at New Palace in the Grand Duchy of Hesse. She died on the 11th of November 1953, aged 87, in Schleswig-Holstein in Germany. Her husband was Prince Henry of Prussia. Together they had 3 children, Waldemar, Sigismund and Henry. Her full name is Irene Louise Marie Anne. Her father was Louis IV, Grand Duke of Hesse and by Rhine. Her mother was Princess Alice of the United Kingdom. She received her first name, which was taken from the Greek word for peace, because she was born at the end of the Austro-Prussian War. Her mother Alice considered Irene an unattractive child and once wrote to her sister Victoria that Irene was not very pretty. Though not as pretty as her sister Elizabeth, Irene did have a pleasant, even disposition. Princess Alice brought up her daughters simply. An English nanny presided over the nursery, and the children ate plain meals of rice pudding and baked apples, and they wore plain middle-class dresses. Irene and her sisters were taught to do housework such as baking cakes, making their own beds, laying fires, and sweeping and dusting their rooms. Princess Alice also emphasised the need to give to the poor and often took her daughters on visits to hospitals and charities. In the autumn of 1878, Irene and her siblings, except for Elizabeth, became ill with diphtheria. Her younger sister, Princess Marie, nicknamed May, died of the disease. Her mother, exhausted from nursing her children, also became infected. Knowing she was in danger of dying, Princess Alice dictated her will, including instructions about how to bring up her daughters. She died of the disease on the 14th of December 1878. Following Alice's death, Queen Victoria resolved to act as a mother to her grandchildren. Princess Irene and her surviving siblings spent annual holidays in England, and their grandmothers sent instructions to their governess regarding their education and approving the pattern of their dresses. With her sister Alix, Irene was a bridesmaid at the 1885 wedding of her maternal aunt, Princess Beatrice, to Prince Henry of Battenberg. Irene married Prince Henry of Prussia, the 3rd child and 2nd son of Frederick III, German Emperor, and Victoria, Princess Royal, on the 24th of May 1888 at the chapel of the Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin. As their mothers were sisters, Irene and Henry were first cousins. Her marriage displeased her grandmother, Queen Victoria, because she had not been told about the courtship until they had already decided to marry. At the time of the ceremony, Irene's uncle and father-in-law, the German Emperor, was dying of throat cancer, and less than a month after the ceremony, Irene's cousin and brother-in-law ascended the throne as Kaiser Wilhelm II. Henrik's mother, Empress Victoria, was fond of Irene. However, she said she was shocked because Irene did not wear a shawl or scarf to disguise her pregnancy when she was pregnant with her first son. This caused a short rift between them. Empress Victoria, who was fascinated by politics and current events, couldn't understand why her son and daughter-in-law would never read the newspapers. However, the couple were happily married and they were known as the very amiables by their relatives because of their pleasant natures. In 1884, the same year that her eldest sister, Victoria, married Prince Louis of Battenberg, another sister, Elisabeth, married Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich of Russia, and when Elisabeth converted from Lutheranism to Russian Orthodoxy in 1891, Irene was deeply upset. She wrote to her father that she cried terribly over Elizabeth's decision. Irene transmitted the haemophilia gene to her eldest and youngest sons, Valdemar and Henrik. Valdemar's health worried her from early childhood. She was later devastated when her youngest child, 4-year-old Henrik, died after he fell and bumped his head in February 1904. Her brother Ernest Louis was married off by Queen Victoria to a first cousin, Victoria of Saxe-Coburg, Gotha. It was amidst the wedding festivities that Irene's youngest surviving sister, Alix, accepted the marriage proposal of Nicholas of Russia, and when Nicholas's father died prematurely in November 1894, Irene and her husband travelled to St. Petersburg to be present at the funeral and the wedding of Alix, who had taken the new name Alexandra Feodorovna to the new Tsar Nicholas II. In 1912, Irene was a source of support to her sister Alix when her son Alexei nearly died of complications of haemophilia at the imperial family's hunting lodge in Poland. Irene's ties to her sister were disrupted by the advent of World War I, which put them on opposing sides of the war. When the war ended, she received word that Alix, her husband and children, and her sister Elisabeth had been killed by the Bolsheviks. Following the war and the abdication of the Kaiser, Germany was no longer ruled by the Prussian royal family, but Irene and her husband retained their estate, Hemmelmark, in northern Germany. When Anne Anderson surfaced in Berlin in the early 1920s, claiming to be the surviving Grand Duchess Anastasia of Russia, Irene visited the woman, but decided she could not be the niece she had last seen in 1913. Princess Irene was not impressed. She said, "I saw immediately that she could not be one of my nieces, even though I had not seen them for 9 years. The fundamental facial characteristics could not have been altered to that degree. In particular, the positioning of the eyes, the ears, etc. At first sight, one could perhaps detect a resemblance to Grand Duchess Tatiana." Irene's husband, Henrik, said that the mention of Anna Anderson upset Irene too much and ordered that no one was to discuss her in his presence. Henrik died in 1929. Irene later adopted Sigismund's daughter, her granddaughter Barbara, born in 1920, as her heir after her son left Germany to live in Costa Rica during the 1930s. He declined to return to Germany. Irene grieved terribly when her haemophiliac eldest son, Valdemar, died in 1945 due to the lack of blood for a transfusion. Irene herself died in 1953, leaving her estate to her granddaughter, Barbara. She was the last surviving child of Princess Alice and Ludwig IV, Grand Duke of Hesse and by Rhine. And this concludes the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please click the like button, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe for future videos. Thank you.